Welcome to Celebrate a Sister podcast. I'm your host, Emma Walkinshaw. I'm a transformational coach. I facilitate the Clarity Catalyst. I'm the founder of Morning Magic Membership. I also lead retreats here in Australia and internationally. I love all things self-mastery, mindset, and personal development. Here on this podcast, I bring you some pretty exceptional women. We talk all things creativity, business, love, life, and moving forward with self-awareness. I also come to you from time to time with a solo podcast with lots of life according to Emma moments where I share some tools and also some, hopefully, inspiration for you to take the next step. Thanks for being here. Welcome, everybody. Today's guest is Sarah Stafford. She is a non-diet intuitive eating dietitian. She runs the Peaceful Eating Project, and her beautiful little slogan is, "It's time to make peace with your food and your body." I love that. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for joining today. And I'm personally really excited about this topic because I find, being a lifelong woman who has been definitely had her fair share of experiencing all different ways of eating. I am super excited to hear your beautiful take on intuitive eating. But firstly, are you happy to share a little bit about who is Sarah? What does she do and how did she arrive with this beautiful, purposeful work supporting people around intuitive eating?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Emma, for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. So a little bit about me. I have been a dietitian for 13 years. I started my career, as most people do, working for the government. I worked in inpatient hospital settings. I've worked in the community. But it wasn't until about 2013 or 14 that I discovered private practice, and I just kind of fell into it and just absolutely adored working for myself and the autonomy that I got from working on my own. So I did that for a little while, and then I kind of felt like I was missing something in my practice with my patients. So a lot of my patients would come to me for guidance around weight management, as well as, lifestyle diseases, diabetes, high cholesterol, that kind of thing. And what we were taught at the time was to support people through weight loss, intentional weight loss, using weight loss diets and lifestyle interventions. And as time went on, I just became increasingly frustrated, and my clients would as well. They would feel like they were failing if they couldn't keep the weight off. They blamed themselves. They felt like, if everyone else can do it, why can't I do it? And I've had my own personal experience with weight loss diets and what I recognize now as disordered eating. And I became increasingly disillusioned with dietetics and nutrition in that weight-centric mode. I then discovered the non-diet approach and intuitive eating, and it's just like it's given me a new invigorated interest in the profession, and I've just absolutely found my vibe. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm not helping people to lose weight intentionally. I'm helping people to find that sweet spot with food and eating in their bodies, and to find that sense of peace and calm around food without obsessing, without counting every calorie or every macro, and finally enjoying food as I think we should be able to do.
Yeah. Yes, so true. All of that, as you're speaking, I was like, oh gosh, I think I'm ticking a few of these boxes. I've been that person that's gone, okay, I'm failing. Why can everyone else do it and I can't do it? Yeah, I totally can identify with that. So can you describe intuitive eating and how it differs from traditional approaches to dieting? So what's kind of like the framework, or what's the premise around it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really great question, because it is very different to traditional dieting. So intuitive eating is a way of nourishing your body and developing a healthy relationship with food by listening to your body's signals and its needs. So instead of following a diet, which is very external, the information comes from a diet plan or a doctor or a dietitian or whoever, intuitive eating encourages you to rely on that inner wisdom and your instincts to guide your food choices. So it's more about self-care, self-trust, listening to your body, and cultivating a really nice connected relationship with your body. Whereas when you think about dieting, it's completely the opposite. Diets teach us to distrust the body. If we're getting a hunger signal and it's only been an hour since we ate, we start to distrust that information that's coming from our body. We think, oh no, the diet says I can't eat until 12 p.m. I'm just going to ride it out, or I'm just going to drink water to fill myself up until I get through. So diet's very external. It's very numbers and goal focused. We're counting things and ticking off things off, an eating plan. But essentially dieting moves our awareness away from our body, and that leads to that sense of mistrust.
That makes sense. And when you're speaking there, I was going, yeah, there's certain things you can't outsource, and that's what you need to eat, right? If you can tune in. So, I was thinking then it's really an empowering people as opposed to taking power away, saying, well, actually, we don't trust you to eat and choose what you need to eat, so we're going to tell you what to eat. Or we try and, I'm speaking from experience here, you want to outsource and go, well, clearly I'm not doing a great job here, so maybe you know better. But do they? So perhaps it's then coming back to, like you're saying, is coming back to, and I love that word that you said, nourish, nourishing yourself, as opposed to eating what's on the plan that may not be a nourishing choice for you at that point in time.
Absolutely. And I love that you've picked up on that word nourish, because nourishment isn't just giving our bodies the right macronutrients and vitamins and minerals. It's about that soul nourishment and that experience that we get from food that is beyond, those measurable things, the nutrients. There's so much more to eating, and eating is something we all have to do. We can't not, we can't just quit eating. It is part of our lives, whether we like it or not. And yeah, eating and nourishment can be so much more than just the food and just the nutrients.
Have you got an example of someone that has adopted this intuitive eating and, come through it, and what their journey has been around bringing on the intuitive eating?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'd like to share my own story around intuitive eating.
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, I can share in a bit more depth and detail. So as I alluded to earlier, I do have a history of disordered eating, and I can trace this right back to my childhood, and the way that I felt about my body as a child sort of led me through, as early as primary school and even into high school, manipulating my food intake to control my body. And it all stemmed from feeling like my body wasn't, the right size or the right shape, the right look. It's all those messages that we get from the world around us. And even as children, we're absorbing that all the time. So, as a child, I grew up wanting to change my body, and the way that I knew how to do that was through food. So, disordered eating behaviours, not quite into the realm of an eating disorder, not diagnosed, but very, very close, I believe. And what I've come to realise as a professional is that dieting and those seemingly benign dieting behaviours like restriction is quite a slippery slope down into disordered eating and then through to eating disorders. And most dieting behaviours are quite disordered. And I think it's very normalised in our culture, the fact that we might severely restrict our intake to something, like 800 calories, which is less than what a toddler might need for the day. We have this very normalized idea about dieting. And in fact, it can be very disordered and can lead to a much darker place. So I had that sort of going on in the background, and it's no real surprise that I ended up studying nutrition and dietetics. And when I look back, I think, I wonder if that was because I was trying to control, to figure out the secret, the magic bullet to finally control my body and to fit in and to look the way that I thought I should. And I think most dietitians or nutrition professionals would relate to that feeling. I think, we're often guided down paths that we need ourselves the most.
I agree.
Yeah, it's funny that. So yeah, throughout university, we were taught this weight loss centric approach. And yeah, through my practice, as I said before, it just there was something missing. And finding intuitive eating was just like that light bulb moment. You don't have to do this to be healthy. Your body is perfect just the way it is, even if it is in quotation marks, overweight or obese. And I don't like to use those words because it's very stigmatizing. But reading the research and listening to people far more experienced than me confirmed for me that you can be healthy in a larger body, and all bodies are designed to be different. We're not all genetically destined to be a certain size and shape. Just like we don't have control over our shoe size, we don't have much control over our body size, despite what we hear in the media and despite what diet culture has us believe, that we have much less control than we actually think we do. Which was a massive paradigm shift for me. Once I really understood that, it changed everything for me. And I now have so much more empathy and kindness and respect for my body.
Yeah.
I'm not quite at the point where I can say I love my body and I embrace every lump and bump and curve. Not quite there yet, and maybe I never will, but that's okay as well. You don't have to be in love with your body, but you can respect it.
Yeah.
And you can treat it with kindness, and you can treat it with, empathy. And yeah, that mindset shift was everything for me.
I've always found it quite interesting, like you say that, maybe I never will. I always find it interesting when I can observe a friend or a family member who has got the most beautiful body and they still have things that they, it's such an illusion. Like I feel it really is an illusion, perhaps even what we see in the mirror, what we've been led to believe. And I love that you just said about, less control than we think, like about our shoe size. I mean, you said that was your light bulb moment. I'm sitting here going, wow, that is a light bulb moment going, because we actually do think we all should be, one size, one shape. And if you are this age, you should be this weight. And, we have this, and I certainly have that belief system. Do you feel like things are shifting and we are starting to see many more examples of different body shapes and sizes?
My goodness, I hope so. So yes and no. And I don't know whether I've created my own little bubble of, non-diet intuitive eating people and, body image and fat positive or fat activism. So I do live in a bit of a bubble as far as that goes. And sometimes I get a bit of a reality check when I speak to someone who is still very, very weight loss focused and very weight centric. But I'm seeing examples of a bit more inclusivity in cinema, for example, or I don't know if you've been watching the latest the Sex and the City and Just Like That.
No,
that
I
show.
haven't, but tell me
No.
about it.
Oh, in the latest episode, so they did some things well, and then it was a missed opportunity in other areas. So this episode looked at Charlotte, and she's re-entering the workforce. She wants to look a certain way. She wants to look like she used to and fit the style of clothing that she used to. So she goes on a very drastic weight loss diet with bone broth and something else. So very, very disordered.
Mm.
And she's, using all the Spanx and everything to fit into her dress. And then, later in the episode, you see her go to her new job and feeling a bit more like she's fitting in a little bit. There is a larger woman body, someone in a larger body. I don't know if that is part of the story that helps Charlotte to feel better about herself. And you see her taking off her Spanx in the bathroom and sort of, embracing herself. So on one hand, that's wonderful that she felt like she was able to do that, and that a larger bodied woman was represented. That's great to see in these TV series. We are seeing more larger bodied people, but at the same time, it was the very disordered eating behavior that was kind of reinforced, and I don't think it was questioned enough. And I think that was a bit of a missed opportunity for them to really delve into this topic a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, true. Because I get what you're saying. On one hand, yes, there was a larger body representation, but then there was still the behavior that we all know of that, extreme, food restriction that, is
and most of us have done at some point.
Yeah. And I like to think that, there is more representation of different bodies, and I've particularly loved, on Instagram, watching all of these beautiful women who are a size 16 who are showing clothing. And I love when they'll do an example of, a size 8, a size 12, a 14, a 16 pair of jeans or clothing. And I just love that. I think it really, for me, it's very freeing going, because I'm in a size 16 body and going, it still can look beautiful, all of those sizes. And I'm loving that for women. I think particularly, I'm 47, so generations under me and younger, I think that is so helpful, as opposed to, I have a daughter who's 21. I don't believe when I was Ruby's age, I ever even knew what a size 16 body looked like to actually, to see that was never an example. And I used to love reading Dolly magazine, but I also used to know how terrible I felt after reading Dolly magazine, because there was no other body shapes in there than one.
Absolutely. I think, yes, we've come a long way in terms of clothing sizing, but there's still a very, very, very long way to go.
Yeah,
I agree. I love that we're seeing examples of larger bodies, but, a size 16 is still very, very average. And there are still people in larger bodies who aren't represented, and they can't just go down to the shopping centre and choose something off the rack. They have to order online, or they have to get it custom made. So we're still living in a world that is not inclusive for all body shapes and sizes. So I agree, but a very long way to go yet.
Even isn't that interesting? So for me, that's the leap I've only been able to take to a size 16. Isn't that interesting? There's a perfect example of me in my mind and my small world only being able to take the leap to size 16 when, because of the work that you do, you've seen many more different examples, and also potentially, like you're saying, heard, they can't walk into a store. So you've firsthand heard what their challenges are. Whereas for me, I'm going, of course, you go, well, it's because I can see a size 16, that's me. But for other people, so even there, I've only made half a leap, haven't I, Sarah? I haven't made a full leap.
We do what we can at the, where
Yes.
we're at in that moment, and learning these things just takes time. And, the more I learn, the more I realize how fat phobic the world is that we live in. And people in larger bodies are very discriminated against. So clothing is just one example. Excuse me. Cinema seating is another one.
Yeah.
And many, many people in larger bodies cannot, without, having to speak to management to arrange another form of seating. A lot of them just can't go.
Wow, I didn't even realise that.
Or flying on a plane is another one. So there's so much more to unpack in that space. And I think there's so much room for learning and awareness and advocacy. And, we don't have to live in a larger body to have compassion and, contribute to some change in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah, we can still, be gracious and accepting and have allowance for all different body shapes. So if someone was interested in embarking on the intuitive eating approach and coming from that, more tuning into nourishing body as opposed to eating at a certain time and a certain amount of macros and calories, where would someone start?
Oh, that's a really good question. It depends. It depends, I think, on you, or whoever's listening, how ready they are to dive into this kind of work. So, the first step I would say is to look at what's around you and what influences are in your world. And if you're someone who uses social media, look at your feed. Are there people on there that are very weight focused? And, I would say do a cleanup of your social media feed, take off anyone who makes you feel like you're not enough in the body you're in, and fill it up with body positive, non-diet, intuitive eating accounts. So that would be step number one. And if you're really ready to dive into some work on a more personal level, then finding a non-diet dietitian with some training in intuitive eating would be ideal, but someone that you can just start to explore this sort of stuff with, start to unpack, okay, where do my ideas around my body come from? What was my childhood like around food? What were the messages that I was receiving from my family or my peers? How has that informed and shaped the way that I eat and the way that I feel about my body? Do I have firm rules around food? So a lot of us have these very sometimes strict but prescriptive rules around the types of foods we should eat, the timing of the food we eat, the quantities, and all of these things that can be challenged and should be challenged as part of the process of letting go of dieting.
Yes. It sounds like it's a lot of unlearning.
Oh, yes. That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, absolutely. There is part of it is unlearning all of those things we think about. Unlearning weighing yourself on a regular basis. Unlearning the types of clothing that you choose that might make you feel really uncomfortable in your body. Unlearning restriction. So unlearning that tendency to hold off until the next meal, or I really feel like a bit of chocolate right now, but it's not on my plan. I'm trying to lose a bit of weight, or whatever that sort of mental dialogue is, internal dialogue, and challenging that and unlearning those messages that we're telling ourselves.
Yeah. Or even just like you say, those rules that you don't even realize. Yeah, it's really unpacking all those rules that just, perhaps it's been, said in the family, or it's something
Mhm.
that, very well-meaning parents have said. It's just, that messaging, and then we
Mhm.
just take on. Yes.
Absolutely. So, I mean, some common examples are finishing everything on your plate,
Yeah.
particularly older generations. That's what, we were taught. And I think that comes from previous generations' trauma around access to food, particularly through war times. There was a lot of food scarcity. So the message that comes down is food is valuable, and, think of all the starving children in Africa.
Yes.
So a lot of adults are taught to override those natural fullness signals because of that. So that's one common rule that I see. Another one is you have to have savory before you have sweet. And
Yes.
this is something that I've had to overcome personally myself. That was just something that we grew up with. And I think to me, it felt like common knowledge. That's what everyone did, right?
Yeah.
But what happens when we do that is we put that sweet food up on a pedestal. It becomes a lot more appealing and valuable because we can't have it just yet. We have to do something in order to earn it or be allowed to have it, and that makes it far more attractive and more appealing. I could go on and on, but you can kind
Yeah.
of
I
see how
do.
that could lead to
Yeah.
certain foods being seen as really desirable, and we can become very fixated on those foods
And also
when we think about
ignoring
it that way.
signs, like, that savory first before sweet, ignoring signs if you are actually full, but pushing through because you want this, like ignoring those signs. And also, I was just thinking too, when you're saying that too, is potentially tuning into your own sensitivities to food instead of pushing through. Obviously, with that whole intuitive eating, I would imagine the other side of it is then you're really tuned into, actually, when I consume this food, how do I really feel? Or what?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is a core skill in learning to be an intuitive eater, is being able to tap in and do that little self-evaluation. How do I feel? How does this food make me feel? And sometimes it's a bit neutral. It's not, I don't feel that great, but I don't feel terrible. I don't feel that good either. Sometimes it it might be, I actually really didn't enjoy that. And I
Yeah.
had this experience. What was it? I can't remember my own example because it was quite a long time ago, but a client recently had this experience where she just craved chips and gravy, and just really was, she had this idea that most of us do, that, chips and gravy is a bad food. She should try to restrict it, shouldn't allow herself to have it. But I challenged her on that, and she was willing to have a go at including it and trying not to restrict herself around it. And she said, you know what, when I had it, I didn't actually really like it.
Oh.
So it was the idea of that high value pedestaled food that seemed to have a lot, was more attractive for whatever reason. Her experience around chips and gravy, that's what it was. And then in reality, when she allowed herself to have it, she's like, nah,
Didn't hit it.
didn't do it for her. And now she knows she can have it whenever she wants, but she doesn't enjoy it and chooses not to have it.
Yeah.
So it is really interesting once you start to use these skills, what comes up, and sometimes it's not what you expect at
Yeah.
all.
Great. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. That's, a couple of the first steps is, looking at those rules that you have decided and taking notice. How do I feel after this? Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So if any of your listeners want to start that process, I've got a free download on my website if they're
Yes.
interested. So yeah, if they want to go to peacefuleatingproject.com.au and just scroll down to the bottom of that first page, they can pop in their details and download the guide there.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, and I'll pop in the show notes that link too if anyone didn't catch that. Sarah, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I love this whole topic of intuitive eating. I think it's such an empowering way to, tune into that whole nourishing your body. And like you said, it's not, there's many ways to nourish your body, and this is one of them through the food we choose. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. So yes, people can jump on and download that book. Brilliant. And is there anything you wanted to finish with, Sarah, about intuitive eating? Is there one last little tip for anybody before we go?
Oh my goodness, I could talk for hours on this. So I don't know how I could boil it down to one little tip. I think probably the biggest change for me came from noticing all the influences around me. So like I said before, clean out your social media feeds, start following accounts that move in this area, and start to notice the changes that happen within you.
Yeah, beautiful. Great tip. You're right. Those influences, almost like little subliminal messages that we don't even realize are penetrating, and we don't even realize. Great.
Absolutely.
Lovely. Thank you, Sarah.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much. An invitation to you, my friend. I have a free Facebook group called 21 Minutes of Morning Magic. I go live every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. Queensland time. This beautiful community was created as I love a morning practice, and I know how beneficial it is for lowering stress levels, in setting intention for the day, and also taking some time to reflect. So if you would love to join me, this is my heartfelt invitation to you. Come over to the free Facebook group. Link is in the show notes, and I'll see you on the mat.